So who do you think will be crowned the king of freestyle chess? This guy, Magnus Carlsen, or this guy, Fabiano Caruana? I'm pretty sure that's a centaur, not a goat, but you get the idea. What does GOAT stand for? Greatest of all time. Magnus has shown that he is in the standard forms of chess, but can he get the job done in this format? Look at the pieces on the back rank. All jumbled up. If you've had a drink, don't worry, we're seeing the same thing too. They're all over the place. There's 960 possible starting positions. That's why it's also known as Chess 960 or Fischer Random, because Bobby Fischer coined this style of chess. But here we're calling it freestyle. What does Magnus do? Well, he kicks off with pawn g4, blasting the cannonball down, this being the cannon. Now, the tournaments in Germany, this is the final. They drew the first game. This is the second. The winner of this wins the entire thing, or we go to tie breaks. Fabi, in response here, plays a blunder on move 1, if you can believe that, by going pawn c6. Look at the evaluation bar react. That's saying that white is over a pawn better already. Why so bad? Well, I guess it doesn't fight for the center, right? It's hard to always know with this stuff. What's the top move should have been played? Well, Magnus plays it now, picks up the king and castles. I mean, this is chess 960 for you. You can castle the king on move 1 or move 2, right? Crazy stuff. Now, Fabi to move, he goes g5 here, also copies Magnus, fights for some space, and Magnus now plays a move he loves. If you've seen my titled Tuesday games, I'll be back with them soon. He plows down the board with pawn h4 here. And what should Fabi do? Well, don't play timidly, meekly like a mouse and go pawn h6 as is played. h5 is best. But this takes some kahunas, right? You're going to push a second pawn, create loads of tension. Is it good? Is it bad? White's always a move ahead. Computer says this is the way to go. Make a nice little pawn square. But Fabi goes h6 and d4. I mean, it's so interesting how you can just not develop pieces and get a good game here. Really, really nice stuff. d5 from Fabi. e4 from Magnus. Forget the pieces. Let's get the pawns running. Now we get castles queenside. Always funny to see in chess 960. There it goes again. And finally, Magnus develops a piece with knight to b3. So does Fabi with knight c7, but not quite as active as Magnus's knight. Now we get knight c3, e6, Fabi going for a nice pyramid or party hat formation, formation, whatever you want to call it. Magnus activates the bishop, Fabi does the same, and now how about this? Pawn to f4. Look at those 5 pawns across the 4th rank. They're like warbirds coming down the board here. Love to see it. Knight d7 develops, and finally we get some tension broken with e takes on d5. Fabi takes with the c pawn. Does expose his king a little bit. Now Magnus takes here. Pawn recaptures and h5. That is ominous. Magnus has a passed pawn already. He's just 3 squares away from making a baby girl. Another queen here, or it could be used as a decoy. Dangerous stuff. So knight b6 from Fabi. He wants some counterplay on the queen side here, looking at the c4 square. Magnus goes bishop d3. We get queen h6. Rook to f1 here, pressuring this backwards f7 pawn. Rook f8 covers some more, and now queen g1 just starts to activate. Bishop c6, and this is nice. Magnus turning this bishop into a snake, bringing it round, hits g3 here, and he does a great positional job of exchanging his bad bishop. That dark squared one was on the same colour complex as this d4 pawn. It had less scope. This one, however, spraying out in all directions, as we can see. Good bishop. Knight c4. And that's why Magnus now doesn't take the knight, but it was actually a good move for a concrete tactical reason. Because although this knight gets hit, it can drop to d2, hit the pawn here. Now you give a pawn, but knight e2. This is a key move that must have been missed. You hit the rook. There are no squares available here. It's got to retreat. Then this one tallies fourth, and now you've got a nice position as white. Lovely complexes to play on. You've got pawn weaknesses to attack. White doing well. But okay, Magnus didn't touch the knight. He moved his rook over to the e file here. Now the knight jumps back to d6, looking at e4 in future, knight c5, Magnus now foraying forward, and f5. Great move by Fabi, going for counterplay. Yes, you make e6 weak, but it's covered for the time being. But in return for that, you start pressuring this king side here. I mean, I'm saying king side. This is traditionally the king side of the board. Throws with you a bit though, plays with you when you've got the kings in random starting positions. Anyway, Magnus to move. He goes queen e5 here, centralizing. And now knight e4 is played, but it begs the question, why not win a clean pawn? Magnus has left it. Well, the problem is rook takes on f8. Now, if rook recaptures, you drop an entire knight because that rook's overloaded. So queen recaptures, forced, but then this pawn caves in. You're no longer laterally defending with the queen. Yes, the knight can take, but queen takes, check. If bishop blocks, then you pick up this pawn. If king moves, then you pick up on g4. White emerges well from the complications. They say tactics flow from a better position, right? That's what's working for Magnus here. So knight e4 played by Fabi. Great outpost. Double defended here. Magnus now goes a4, asking a tricky question. You know, is knight b5 coming? Looking at some dark squares, how to respond. And Fabi now goes wrong. He's worried about these ideas. He chops on c3. What should he have done? Well, chopping on c5, a better move. Complications ensue. It's a different game. But this one was played. Pawn recaptures in return. Yes, it opens the king, no more knight b5, but look at the sorry state of these black minor pieces, especially that bishop. This is not fun. Now Fabi takes, wins a pawn, but Magnus takes here. Queen recaptures played. This one was an option, but Fabi goes like this, and now Magnus has many good moves. You know, he can take on g5 with the queen. This one then under pressure. The h-pawn running dangerously, but instead he goes for a tactical continuation. I like this one. What piece do you give up if you're looking for a puzzle solution? Yes, you give your queen. Who doesn't want to sack the queen? For the fans, Magnus takes on c7 here with check. That would be checkmate, except the queen's not supported. So king takes back, and now this is the follow-up move. Triple fork there. All of these heavy pieces, king goes, queen drops, now the rook recaptures, and the problem is this running h-pawn is deadly, and this bishop's like a big pawn, ugly. So you have to respond to this threat. Bishop takes on a4 played. I say respond to the threat, so the rook's glued to stopping the square basically. Magnus activates with rook to e5, and now a6 is a decent idea. Bishop b5 coming to exchange this absolute monster sniper down here. Rook takes on g5 played. You know, you couldn't cover with the rook. h7 comes. The rook has to stay on the back rank. So we now see bishop b5. Fabi carrying on with the plan. Check is played, the king retreats, now the bishops come off, pawn recaptures, and Magnus picks up a second pawn here. He's a pawn to a good. Fabi's structure a mess, so he checks. The king steps up, another check. King h2, rook h2, sorry, coming behind the pawn. Magnus now checks, the king moves, and the pawn advances. This is ominous. b6 played, king e1, coming around like this to dislodge the rook. And now Fabi chucks a pawn for counterplay. What if he starts marching the king over, however? Well, the rook can come this way, you know, or to b7, sit over here, keep the pawn covered, and the king runs like this. And if this rook goes back here, well, then you run the king all the way up the board. And if this king tries to come over here too far with this pawn, well, this one starts mopping up the queen side. You know, it's just a horrendous endgame. So instead, b4 played. Takes was played. King b5 hits the pawn. c3 covers. The king marches in. Magnus checks. Also x-ray holds the c3 pawn. And now this king starts running away from any danger. You don't want to get checkmated. King e3. King g1. Rook h6 to keep covering this square. And after king g2, Fabiano Caruana resigned the game, and it wasn't premature. You know, the rook is glued to the defense of the pawn, but even if you ditch that one day as a decoy, these ones then get mopped up, and then there's too many pawns just running away down the board. Don't want to click into the whole line. Feel free to have a click around. I'll link this game below in case you want to check it. So there you go. Magnus Carlsen getting the job done as he so often does. He's the GOAT of all chess formats. Congratulations to him. And if you want to see a game in which he plays some wacky stuff, you would think it was freestyle chess, chuck in the pawns, then check out the video on screen. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Cheers.